everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Robin, or A Hobbit's Reading List, and we are going to do my July TBR. So I didn't finish all the books from June, so I don't get a reward, and I also did not finish more than 2 books, so I get a consequence book. The consequence book has already been chosen, so I will tell you what it is at the end of the video. And we don't have any particular theme or anything this month, which is good because me trying to have a theme last month did not work out. So for people who haven't watched my other TBR videos, I play a TBR game using the Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit board. And for each color, these colors, they represent one of the 6 genres that I read the most, which are fantasy, romance, Jewish, LGBT, classics, and psychology. Additionally, the headquarter spaces, the bigger spaces at the end of the spoke, are miscellaneous spots. So that covers the rest of the books on my shelves that don't fall into one of those 6 categories. We also have the roll again spot, which adds a book to my TBR. I've been saying this the past couple months because I've had consequence books the past 3 months, that we're gonna try to not have a ton of roll agains, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going into this with no expectations because me having expectations massively screws me over. So let's just get into the game and see what happens. Okay, so we do 7 main rolls, and then if I end up on a roll again, I will add an additional book. 2. So the first roll, I get to just choose whichever sort of category I want. So I'm gonna go ahead and go blue, which is LGBT. Okay, this is an LGBT book that was written by BIPOC author. None are immediately springing to mind, but we'll see what I have. Before I tell you what I picked for my first roll, yes, I'm wearing a different shirt because I filmed my rolls yesterday and then I had to go and purchase the book that I needed for the first roll because I didn't have anything. I didn't have any LGBT written by a BIPOC author on my shelves or on my wish list, which made me feel really bad, and I need to change that. So today's the day after I filmed my rolls, and this morning I went and got My Government Means to Kill Me by Rasheed Newson. This is about a coming of age about a gay black man in the 1980s during the AIDS epidemic, and his development with himself as well as his development as this political figure to help the people who are going through HIV/AIDS. And also I believe it has some themes with grief because obviously. And so I found this at my local independent bookstore, and I thought it seemed just really interesting and really powerful, and it has really good reviews. So and it's also written by a gay black man who also writes or has written for TV on shows like The Chi, Bel Air, and Narcos. So I was like, those are 3 pretty good shows, so I'm actually really excited about this one. Second roll, 3, 1, 2, 3, yellow's fantasy, or 1, 2, and then any of the others. Let's just go ahead and go fantasy. Okay, this is a fantasy as a TBR veteran, which means it's been on my shelf for more than a year. For the second roll, it was a fantasy that is a TBR veteran, If you watched my last TBR, I believe I also had this prompt of like TBR veteran in a different category. And so my rule is pretty much like a TBR veteran is anything that I have had more than a year, because last May was when I really started reading for fun again, and when I started getting a lot more books. So the selection was fairly limited, but I went ahead and grabbed Fantasies by George MacDonald. The reason I grabbed this was actually because I was reading the annotated Hobbit in all throughout June, and Tolkien has read this book. It was referenced a couple times in the annotations, and he apparently really enjoyed it like when he was younger, but then as he got older and he reread it, he really hated it. And so and I've had this on my shelf for, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 7 years. I know it was a holiday present, but I just hadn't picked it up yet, and it's been a close contender on a couple TBRs now. And then when I had the option, and because I know that it was referenced in the annotated Hobbit, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna see if I agree with Tolkien. So, The Fantasies by George MacDonald. I don't know anything about it. There's no blurb, and like I could look at it online, but that's too easy. From what I know, it says a fairy romance, so it has fairies in it. But that's really, I don't know anything else about it. I do know it was written in the late 1800s, I believe. Yes, it was published in 1858 by Smith, Elder and Co. in London, and then this printing is from 1905. So, this will be interesting to read. 1-2, which is fantasy, or 1-2, which is romance. Let's go ahead and do romance. Okay, it's a romance, which is my biggest book, so the one with the most pages. Great. So, for romance, that is the biggest book. I'm actually really happy about this. I'll be really interested to see what happens. I picked up Hidden Huntress by Danielle Jensen. Right? Yeah. This is a sequel to a book I read in February. Yes. I read that book in 30 hours. Obviously broken up by like sleep and stuff. So like, let's say like 10 hours. I busted through it. The first book in the series is called Stolen Songbird. It's about a girl, I believe she's like 16, 17. Her name is Cecile, and she is kidnapped essentially from her village and taken underneath this like dark mountain where trolls live. And the trolls are different from at least what I think of. I think of like Tolkien trolls. But these trolls can look very like disfigured and very like ugly, whereas some of them look beautiful and or just like human, but they all have like magical powers. And so the reason she's kidnapped is because there's a prophecy. It's a chosen one series. There's a prophecy that someone with her description will help free the trolls from beneath the mountain. And there are some other things. It is a romance. Cecile is betrothed and then married to the prince, whose name I believe is Tristan. It's very much like an enemies to lovers vibe. I wouldn't say it's a true enemies to lovers, but there are some things that happen at the end of Stolen Songbird, and I'm very curious to see what happens. So I'm really glad I was able to pick this up. I'm very curious how quickly I'm going to read this one. I did read the first chapter because that was in Stolen Songbird, and so I'm excited. Getting a lot of 2s, which is not awesome. Let's go ahead and go green, because that is Jewish. Okay. A 5-star prediction. I will have to look at my shelf and see what I'm predicting. Okay, a Jewish book that is a 5-star prediction. I'm gonna try this again. I know this was on a previous TBR. It's Shmutz by Felicia Berliner. Shmutz is about, I believe, an ultra-Orthodox teen, young adult. She's like 19, 18? 18. Her name is Razel, and she's sort of dealing with this idea of like getting married, but also sort of trying to figure out her sexuality, and she gets really into like online porn. And I've heard that this is so good. It was personally recommended to me based off of my like tastes, and I was really bummed that I couldn't get to it. I believe I got it in March, and March was my really bad month. So I'm really excited to try to get this again. Alright, let's get a big number this time. Well, it's bigger than 2. I have a 3 if you can't see that. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, which is classics, or 1, and then any of the second ring. Let's just go ahead and do another romance. I'm sort of feeling beachy romance reads right now, so it'll be 1, 1, 2, 3. It's my romance that's the smallest book. I'm not not thrilled with how this is going so far. A romance that is my smallest book, which is really funny, because I just had romance that was my biggest book. This is just a month of repeat, because I have 2 books now that have been on previous TBRs that I did not get to. 9.5 weeks. I know I had this one in March because I was very confused trying to find it on my shelf, and it was in my bag that I took with me to New York City, because this is set in New York City. It's a very short, erotic, I don't even know if romance is the right word. I mean, it technically is, but it's just a love affair that's very passionate but very brief. And I do want to read this. I've also had this for a very long time. So I'm really glad that, once again, I can maybe get to it this month. But we'll see. It's 5, so we have 2 more rolls. I'm at this point, I'm kind of hoping for a roll again, because I feel like this is a little boring. 6. Okay, sweet. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is roll again. Which is roll again. Or I could go back up the spokes. I'm just gonna go ahead and go for the roll again, because since I put that out in the universe. So that means I'll have 8 books plus a consequence book. 5. 2, 3, 4, 5, which is miscellaneous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fantasy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fantasy. Let's go ahead and do miscellaneous, because I haven't gotten any yet. And of course, the first one in here is Miscellaneous, which is a literary book. So it's literary fiction, which I do have some. So, okay. I'm not upset with that. Okay, a literary book. This is such a broad genre. So, to figure out the genre stuff, I just go to Storygraph and like filter. And so anything that was selected as literary, then that's what I have to pick from. And so I had quite a few options. But I wanted, and I was debating between like this or Before the Coffee Gets Cold, but I really just want something cozy. And I think Before the Coffee Gets Cold is cozy, but I also think that it's gonna mess me up. And so I'm nervous. I like feeling happy. I don't know. I'm not one of those booktubers that I'm like, yes, mess me up, emotionally destroy me. I'm not one of those. And I don't mind being like a little emotionally destroyed if I know that like very quickly it's going to be resolved and we'll all be happy. So I picked up The Secret Life of Albert Entwhistle instead by Cain. So this is about a almost 65-year-old man who has been a post-delivery man for pretty much his entire life. Like, I believe he started being a postal worker when he's like 16. And he's approaching 65, and he's been informed that when he turns 65, he'll be forced into retirement. This sends him into essentially a tailspin, because this is his whole life. He intentionally made his whole life about this so that he didn't have to deal with the fact that he grew up in the 70s as a gay man and stuff that part down. He has a lot of internalized homophobia. I have already started reading the book because I was super excited to pick it up, because I've wanted it since last year, and I got it last year, and it's just been sitting there waiting. And he is deciding to use his time to try to reconnect with an ex-lover. And I think there's gonna be some like found family in there. It's gonna be cozy as shit. I'm super excited. Oh. 3. Alright. 1, 2, 3. There's romance. 1, 2, 3 classics. 1, 2, 3 romance. Yeah. I don't know. Do I want to romance or a classic? I have a lot of romance. I guess I'll go classic. Not really feeling classic right now. Okay. And it's a classic that's a hardback. Which... okay. That gives me some options. A classic book that is a hardback. My options for this were not great. Or at least... were not super appealing, considering how many other books I have to read that aren't even in the TBR game. So I picked up Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut. I want to give Vonnegut another shot. It's not that I'm disappointed by him at all. I really love Slaughterhouse-Five. I liked Bluebeard. I was a little disappointed. I was expecting to like it more. And so I'll be interested to see how I feel about a book I've literally never heard of. I've never heard of Galapagos talked about. I talked with my dad a little bit about it this morning. He said he wasn't a huge fan. So I'll be interested to see what I think. So this is the bonus roll. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Romance. And, well, these two. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, roll again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a classic. So a romance, a classic, or roll again. You know what? I'm just gonna do another romance. I'm just gonna do it. It's what I like reading. It's the reason it's my most popular genre. I don't know why I did that. Why did I roll again? I'm... massive brain fart. Alright. Alright. The first in a series. Perfect. Love that. Yes. Okay. And the last book in the game, not counting like consequence books and the other additional books that I've added to my TBR for no reason, is The Lightning Struck Heart by TJ Klune. Whoops. It's the first in a series. There we go. This is also a fantasy series. Okay, so I was reading the synopsis to try to sum it up for you, but it sounds so bonkers that I'm just gonna read it. This is a Tales from Verania book. It's the first in the series. Once upon a time, in an alley in the slums of the city of Locks, a young and somewhat lonely boy named Sam Haversford turns a group of teenage douchebags into stone completely by accident. Of course, this catches the attention of a higher power, and Sam's pulled from the only world he knows to become an apprentice to the king's wizard, Morgan of Shadows. When Sam is 14, he enters the dark woods and returns with Gary, the hornless gay unicorn, and a half-giant named Tiggy, earning the moniker Sam of Wilds. At 15, Sam learns what love truly is when a new knight arrives at the castle, Sir Ryan Foxheart, the dreamiest dream to have ever been dreamed. Naturally, it all goes to hell through the years when Ryan dates the reprehensible Prince Justin, Sam can't control his magic, a sexually aggressive dragon kidnaps the prince, and the king sends him on an epic quest to save Ryan's boyfriend, all while Sam falls more in love with someone he can never have. Or so he thinks. There's so much happening in there. I got this book for the holidays, And I guess I didn't fully read the blurb because I knew it was sort of like an unrequited love sort of thing, but I didn't realize so much else was going on. So those are the books for my TBR for the roles. My books that are being read additionally, let's start with the Consequence book. So Consequence book is Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall. Now, people may look at previous TBRs and notice a theme with the Consequence books, where they're books that my dad feels like I should read, not necessarily that I won't like them. This one's different because my dad read this earlier in June when he went on a big romance kick, and I said that he needed to read gay romance to balance out all the straight romance he was reading, and he picked this one because it was on Kindle Unlimited, and he hated it. He just absolutely hated it. And he knows that I have this on my shelf. I think that's why he picked it. He knew it was on my TBR to get to at some point. And he wants me to read this because he wants to know if I end up liking it. And I'm pretty sure that if I do, I might get disowned. So that'll be interesting. I'm really nervous about that one because I do generally like Alexis Hall's writing and their storytelling. And I've heard such mixed reviews about Something Fabulous, not even just from my dad, but from other people. And so I'm really curious. The other books that I'm going to read, there are 3 more. So I'm going to try to read. The first one is We Could Be So Good by Sebastian. I got this as an e-arc in, want to say, early June. Yeah, because I was on vacation. And I got it like literally the day before it was published, which I was confused about. But I have an arc of it. It's going to expire by the end of July, I believe, so I would like to read it during the month of July. I will probably buy a physical copy because I do really like Cat Sebastian's writing. So I don't know what it's about, quite honestly. I was on NetGalley, I saw Cat Sebastian had a book available, and I requested it. So there you go. I do know it's set in the late 1950s, and I believe it's a rival romance between 2 men. One of them is like a nepo baby in like the publishing industry, I believe, and the other one is like a journalist. Like, it works for the newspaper and had to actually work. And so I believe that's sort of where it starts. And it's a romance. And so I am really, really curious because I like I said, I love Cat Sebastian. So the next book is The Pot Hunters by P.G. Wodehouse. I never know what the P.G. Wodehouse books are about. I know it's a school book, so it's set at a school. I know it's fairly short, and that's about it. That's all I really know. It's for the podcast that I do with my dad, where he is the more experienced P.G. Wodehouse reader, and I know nothing about P.G. Wodehouse except what we've read so far, and we talk about it. So that's about it. I know it's called The Pot Hunters, and I know it's also very hard to find, so I'll have to read it on Kindle, so that's why I put up a picture. And finally, I'm going to do a buddy read with Jess from Books Past Bedtimes of the Reek, which is the 3rd book in the Monstrous series by Lily Mayne. I fell in love with this series. I figured I was going to like it when I saw Jess talking about it on her channel, and I read the first 2 books, and she contacted me to do a buddy read because she wants to do a reread of the series, and I was like, yes, perfect. So it gives me an excuse without having to wait for when I actually finish all the books in a month's TBR, because that's apparently very difficult lately. I think that's it. That's it. Yes. I don't know. That should be 11 books. Yeah. I feel like that number's wrong. I feel like I'm missing one. I don't know what, though. So that's my TBR for July. As always, I went far above 7. I was supposed to do 7. Yeah. It's that thing where I overestimate how much I can accomplish. Again, as always. That's why everyone really watches, just see how thoroughly I screw myself. I hope it's entertaining. So, thank you for watching. If you've read any of these books or have any of these books and would like to do a buddy read during the month, that'd be great. Hit me up. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe, click the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. And check out my vlog so you can see how panicked I get during July when I try to read all these. Bye!